roadmap and the opportunity assessment here. Now I think we're all waiting for something for which we saved our breath. It's announced by Kamal in the morning. We have this amazing fireside chat with Uber India President, Mr. Amit Jain. Amit, would you please come? Amit leads the company's growth in one of the most strategic global markets for Uber. Prior to Uber, Amit was president of Rent.com, a leading technology company in the US dedicated to giving renters a free and convenient way to find the perfect place to live. Earlier, Amit spent several years at TPG Capital, a global PE firm with over $70 billion in assets under management, and also at McKinsey & Company, where he was an associate partner. Amit holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from IIT Delhi and an MBA from Stanford University. So I think before the session starts, a big round of applause in anticipation. Guys, show your energy, please. Over to you, Ravi and Amit.
Thank you. So, we're going to make this session really fun session. Amit, I think they have a video. Let's run the video first.
பயணம் எவ்வளவு சுவாரஸ்யமான ஒரு விஷயம் இல்லை? நம்முடைய தேவைக்கான பயணங்கள் நமக்கு திருப்பி தரதா என்ன? மறக்க முடியாத அனுபவங்கள். இந்த பயணம் நம்மளை வேற ஒரு மனிதனாவே மாத்திடுது. நாளைய பயணம் எப்படி இருக்க போகுது? நல்ல பயணமா அமையணுங்கிற ஆசையும் பதட்டமும் எல்லாருக்கும் நிறையவே இருக்கு. அதை முடிவு செய்ய போகிறது பயணத்தில் நம்ம சந்திக்கிற மனுஷங்க தான். அவங்களுக்கும் நமக்குமான அந்த உறவு தான்.
So Amit, that's about you guys empowering drivers across India, right?
Absolutely.
And how many of those do you have now? How many drivers do you have?
So we've got over 350,000 driver partners who've been on our platform over the last 3 years that we've been in India.
350,000. And do you all disclose how many rides you all do a day with 350,000 drivers out there?
No, it's been an amazing journey. So again, Uber has been in India for about 3 years. We started, in September, just about 2.5 to 3 years back. Over the course of the 3 years, it's been an absolutely phenomenal ride, and I'll get into some of the more details. But as we think about the opportunities that Uber has created, it's been absolutely fascinating. So 350,000 today, and increasing exponentially. To put that in perspective, the Indian Railways today has about 1.4 million employees. The Indian Army has about 1.3 million employees. So the job opportunity creation that Uber has created over the last 3 years in India will slowly get there, if not exceed that, in the very next few years.
That's amazing. I think not just as jobs, but you've made them entrepreneurs in some sense, right? I mean, they really work for themselves.
Absolutely.
I know from personal experience, I probably had my last driver now, because my last good driver, he quit one day and I said, why are you quitting? I think I've taken good care of you. He says, no, but it's just such a better life with Uber. and so, I thank you for taking him away from me, I guess. But that's true for so many, right? I think they earn a better income, they have more flexibility. That's fantastic. So, now tell us a little bit about the Uber story, because I was there at the beginning. I helped you all launch in Bangalore. I know you all started out with BMWs and Mercedes and everything. And, we had a grand ceremony at the Leela where, you all launched with just two employees who came down here. The other two were just, I think they're the roving launch team or whatever that came down. And 4 employees launched Bangalore, literally in, a month worth of planning. So, how many employees do you all have now in India?
So we've just touched over 500 employees. Again, when we started, Bangalore was obviously our first city in India. By that time, we had been in several countries, but we're still picking momentum. Today, as we look at Uber worldwide, we are in over 75 countries and over 450 cities. And in India, over the last 3 years, we've expanded to around 27 cities. We started off our service in Bangalore with very high-end cars. So we had BMWs and we had Mercedes and we had Audis, and that was the inaugural point in Bangalore. But over time, I don't know, how many of you have taken an Uber so far? Okay. That's not the full room. The objective is the full room.
Hey, I thought you were going to offer everybody a credit now.
Absolutely. So we started with very high-end cars, but over time, as we, there was a lot of customization that happened for Uber in India. Uber had a certain playbook. We came to India, realized the needs of India were very different, realized the demand for services, the kind of services, the affordability of services very different. So a lot of customization happened over the years. And now, obviously, our biggest product is something that was started in India, which is an Uber Go service, which is very far from a BMW. It's a car which is a hatchback, the 3 lakh or the 4 lakh or the 5 lakh car.
And the plans are to go what? Driverless car too eventually? I think that's also part of the plan in at least the US, right?
Driverless cars in the US, I think it's a while before we see driverless cars in India or in Kolkata.
True, fair enough. So now let's talk a little bit about, the regulatory environment, right? I think, at Uber has been an example of, a company that's come and kind of hit a new industry and created a new model. And literally, you'll need, the old rules don't apply to y'all in some sense, but, the status quo industry or the incumbents are all up in arms, right, everywhere.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit of how you're tackling that across India.
Yeah, so change for anybody is never easy. Change is always hard. As we look at how Uber has evolved across the world over the last 5 years, in pretty much all places that we've gone, including India, you've got regulations that were not written for today's world or for the change that technology is bringing. So oftentimes, pretty much all the times, regulations have to keep pace with technology. In India as well, we are operating in a space where the central guidelines were passed about last year, which said this is a new space and this is how this space should be regulated. But there are no laws that govern our space today. We're still governed by the Motor Vehicles Act of 1988, which was at a time when the net didn't exist and which was a time that Uber certainly didn't exist. I'll give you a few examples that I find very fascinating. So about 100 years back, when cars were invented, when the first cars went on the road, there was a regulation that said a person had to be walking in front of a car, waving a flag. That was to protect the horse and carriage industry at that time. So, go back 100 years. So over time, better sense, better regulations prevailed, and the horses were left to do better things, and so regulations evolve over time, and that's not just the last century. As we look at even last year, in London, there was a regulation which said that if you get an Uber within 1 minute, the car has to be waiting at least 5 minutes before you get in the car. So this is London. This is a developed market. The car is there, but you cannot get in the car. The driver partner is sitting, you are waiting, you got to clock it for 5 minutes to become parity with the existing industry out there. South Korea was another very fascinating example, which said you could take an Uber as long as you were not a South Korean. So locals could not take an Uber. You had to be a foreigner or had to have some disability. So foreigners, or if you had a disability, you could take an Uber. So the point is, regulations always will have to keep pace with technology. We are in a world where technology is changing so fast where things are changing so fast and regulations have to keep pace. There'll be progressive governments that will take progressive steps and change regulations accordingly. For some other governments, it takes a longer time.
All right. So, I think that's true across lots of other industries as well, right? Where you're not just leading the charge in some sense in a very visible way. But if you look at online pharmacies, you look at the use of drones, you look at the use of robotics, autonomic cars, a whole bunch of areas, even in e-commerce, we're starting to see regulations are not keeping up, right? So do you have a sense of how fast industry and government will kind of reconcile this? Or do you think it's just going to have to fight it out state by state across India?
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on the industry. I think ours, at least, is an industry which is transport, which is a state subject. So you've got to work with regulators across 28 subjects. There are other industries where the central government can enact regulations. So I think it depends by industry, but for us, it's a 28 state-by-state subject to push regulations.
Got it. So we'll be coming with some questions to the audience, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about the scale at which Uber operates worldwide. You said, 450 cities. And how big is Uber overall?
So Uber, again, 450 cities, 75 countries, employee base, we have close to 8,000 people across the world, and we are growing exponentially. So we grow certain percentage points week over week. And the way we operate, and one of the things that makes it a very different model is each of our 450 cities operates like a startup. So you've got a local CEO for each of the 450 cities that is totally empowered to make decisions for his or her city. Decisions regarding, what kind of service, what price point, where should the office be, how many people, what engagement programs. Everything about the business is the decision of the local CEO. So you're empowering people as you're growing, which is one of the biggest reasons that we've been able to scale so fast. So in the last 5.5 years, scaling from one city to 450 cities and growing, it's got to be about empowerment. It's got to be about builders. It's got to be about people who are motivated and empowering them, letting them build an organization within certain boundaries, but very limited boundaries on how you create the best service possible.
Got it. So 8,000 employees, but you guys have raised a ton of money, right?
We have.
How much? Most
So we have, knock on wood, we've got about 11 billion on our balance sheet today.
11 billion on the balance sheet in cash. Wow, that's a lot of bullets. 11 billion. I think a lot of Fortune, even 100 companies would be very pleased to have that kind of bank balance. So now tell us, I think, what is it like to be led by a guy like Travis, right? I had the opportunity to meet him for the first time in Delhi in January.
Yeah.
And he seemed very, very relaxed, chilled out guy. Even though he's running this thing in, gazillions of countries, and I think he's in a different city every day, right? Practically.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
No, Travis is a great leader. At the end of the day, he's a human being just like you and me. I think what differentiates him and what made this journey possible for him, and for him it was not the first journey. He had done 3 other startups before this. He had exited one, but 2 had failed. So it's not an overnight success. He spent several years, 15 plus years, over various journeys. So all of us see what he built last, or what is the most successful, but that was his journey. So it takes a while. I think the key differentiator and the key thing about him is differentiating perception from reality. And being able to cut through the clutter and say what we think is right and what is reality. And what do we think can make a difference. If you have a certain belief, and if you're right about that belief, if you're confident about that belief, you can make a change. You'll have 100 people telling you why that's not the right answer. You'll have 1,000 people telling you why you're completely absurd and you're thinking the wrong way. But if you have a belief and you believe that is right, you push for that, and you push for that against all odds. So I think that's the basic, fundamental thing about Travis, which is a certain vision of how things should be, and push for that, know what reality is, and push for that against all odds.
All right. And when you look at the concept itself, it's not that complex, right? I mean, there's a lot of complexity under the hood that we are not maybe appreciating necessarily out of the box, but seems like a straightforward business idea, right? It's come down to a lot of aggressive execution and growth across the world, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is. There's some complexity.
Yeah. No. In fact, there is a lot of complexity. I don't mean to minimize that.
Yeah. No, but the idea started off, Ravi, as let's get from point A to point B. And again, I mean, this was, Travis in Paris near the Eiffel Tower with a friend saying, what if you could just push a button and get a car? So that was the genesis of the idea 6 years back. And that's where it started. So it was a very simple idea in terms of how the idea started. I think over the years, we've stumbled onto something much, much, much bigger than the idea of getting from point A to point B. So, as we think about where we are and where we are headed, we've stumbled upon a vision that makes a fundamental difference in the lives of our riders, of our driver partners, and our cities. And let me just spend a minute explaining each of those points, because that's what drives each one of us. That's what drives our entire 8,000 plus employees. As we think about riders, so I was in the US for 17 years before I moved to India last year. And even before I took up this position, I was spending several months in India. And to me, that was very liberating because I could get around from point A to point B. I didn't have to worry about, okay, whom do I wait for? Who'll give me a ride? Do I have a driver? Will I get a cab or not? It was very fundamental and liberating for me. So from a rider perspective, and hopefully for those of you, I hope more, but those of you who've taken it, it's the ability to get a ride at the touch of a button. From a driver partner perspective, as we think about the 350,000 plus, which is expanding rapidly, there are a couple of things that have made a huge difference. One, it is creating micro-entrepreneurship. So it's creating entrepreneurs of people who otherwise had maybe fixed hours jobs or worked in jobs that they didn't have the flexibility. So here, a partner who's working on Uber has the flexibility. You can come on when you want, you can go off when you want, there are no working hours. If you have to drop your kids to school, you do that. If you have to take a month off, you do that. There is no fixed working hours, it's very flexible. Second is the livelihood that somebody earns. In most cases, and I encourage those of you who take an Uber to talk to your partners, in most cases the livelihood is much more than what somebody earned in their previous job. So it's a livelihood that offers them a different level of income and things to do that they could not do earlier. The third, as I talk to many people, is the dignity of labor. See, one of the things that many of the driver partners will tell you, and this is again very inspirational for me, is the dignity of doing this work. How do you do work but be respected by the people you are serving, and dignity of labor? So absolutely critical in some of the things that impacts. As we look at number 3, cities, our cities, unfortunately in India, are one of the most congested and polluted in the world. How do we improve our cities? How do we make transportation better? One option is obviously public infrastructure, public transport, but those are expensive, those take time. How do you improve that with the public infrastructure that we have? We've got X number of cars on the road. In most of our Indian cities, a vast majority of those, 75% of those, if not more, have one passenger in the car. What if you could change that to 2 people in the car? What if you could change that to 3 people in the car? Could you realistically get rid of 30% of cars on the road? Could you realistically change habits where somebody is not buying their second car over time, and over time not buying their first car, because you've got a service that is cheap, that is safe, that is reliable, that is affordable when you want to get to point A from point B. And it's not just about commercial cars. Commercial cars are just the tip of the iceberg. It's about private cars. What if you're going from point A to point B, you could give a ride to somebody else who's going in the same direction? What if all the personal cars could become shared cars? So the millions of cars on a road become shared cars, and we reduce the congestion and the pollution which is so intrinsic to our cities today. That is what we are trying to get to. And that is the technology that again, we stumbled on. This was not started off with this vision. We stumbled on, but that's the technology that we have, and that's our vision on how we make our cities today. And it's the most impactful in our country, like India, to make our cities a much better place.
So you really touched on a lot of things there. The asset-light economy that's coming, right? On-demand services, the future of work almost, right? How work is going to get redefined. The lifestyle of those drivers is very different now, as you said, right? They control flexibility of everything they do. I met a driver a few months ago who's actually a startup entrepreneur, right? And I asked him why he's driving, and he's saying, I'm pitching all the folks. And he says, when I give rides back from the airport, guess what? There are lots of VCs and investors and all that. So I said, come on, that's nonsense. And he says, no, see, I'm talking to you. And 3 hours ago, I talked to Sharad Sharma, who was in the same cab. So I was like, wow, you talked to two of us on the same day, and and then he's pitching his idea to folks, and so he says that's what he does, and his other founders doing it too, and they were well-off kids, but they found this is a good way to get going, So I think it's interesting that you're able to bring all kinds of folks into it, right?
I'll give you another example, right? One of our driver partners in Delhi is a lady by the name of Zamrood. She's doing her education in Jamia Millia University, and she's been with us for over a year now. And in talking to her, she's like, when I started driving for Uber, my parents were completely against it. They were like, you've lost your mind. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And she's like, this is a way for me to be independent, be flexible, and earn money in an environment that's safe. And it's helping pay for their education. And over time, it took her several months to convince her parents, and over time, now the money that she earns is helping pay for her education. After the education, she probably will not continue, but this is something that she's doing right now. Another interesting point as we look at stats, and I'll compare stats from Uber globally to Uber India. So Uber globally, most of the people who drive on the Uber platform are part-time. They'll put in 10 hours a week, they'll put in 20 hours a week, but they're part-time. It's not a full-time job, it's an extra opportunity to use the time that they have to earn some more money. In India today, that stat's very different. For most of the driver partners on our platform today, it's a full-time work opportunity. That'll change over time. That'll change over time, as this is not your first primary, this is a supplement to what you're doing, because you have the flexibility to do this anytime you want.
Got it. So Amit, this is the product conclave, okay? So let's talk a little bit of product now, right? I mean, we've talked your business model, we've talked your innovative company and, the founding of the company and all that. But there's a lot of product in Uber as well, right? When we hosted the global CTO of Uber at the warehouse a couple of months ago when he was visiting, and he walked me through all the different stuff you're doing. He for instance, just to relate to the audience, he said Uber is able to understand as people just open the app that we're at an event like this, and they can predict how many cars you might need outside, and they're already pulling the cars in closer to this venue because they know who came here by Uber, who is planning to leave, and the very fact that n number of people here start to open Uber means the session is probably about to end and they're going to go out. And so, they're able to guide. It's like predictive, I think he called it predictive sourcing or something, right? It's some people I've talked to say, hey, Uber is going to become my digital wallet, right? The others say it's not just a transport company, but it could be doing other things as well. Can you give us a couple of examples of what else you're doing and what kind of products under the hood there? Because you customized it for India too, right? You all didn't have COD. I mean, by COD, I mean cash on, whatever, exit. This is the first country you've done that in, right?
No, I think the fundamental of the product is matching of demand to supply. And how do you ensure that there's enough supply at any point where we have demand or we expect demand? Right? And you build algorithms of how that has happened over time, how that changes what you expect. From a tech perspective, going a little bit under the product tech, it's each of our cities is divided into mini hexagons. and said, in a particular hexagon, is supply more than demand or is demand more than supply? So what do you do if, if demand is more than supply? How do you get more supply in that hexagon so that at any point in time, your waiting time as a rider is less than 5 minutes? So we've achieved our objective if we reduce waiting times. Right now it's less than 5 minutes, is to get that less than 2 minutes. So how do you match that? And how do you incentivize people and driver partners to come where demand is higher? So that's kind of the crux of the technology. As we build other things on this, so for India, for example, we introduced cash last year. Cash in India is not a big thing. It was a huge thing for us because for the last 5 years, in all the countries that we've been, we'd never introduced cash in any of our economies, in any of our countries. But it was a big thing because from an India perspective, the consumers wanted that. And it was a long discussion back and forth on why India should have cash when the other 50 plus countries don't have cash. But it proved to be great, and now we've actually taken cash to other countries as well. Some of the other customizations that we've done for India, we are testing a pilot for motorcycles. So we've got a motorcycle pilot that is currently underway in Gurgaon, that's currently underway in Ahmedabad. We are testing a pilot for autos that's currently underway in Coimbatore, in Bhubaneswar. And it is about if you can connect supply and demand, how do you scale the types of services that you can connect the demand to? Some of the other experiments that we continue to do, and again, this goes back to our empowering the city model, is each city has a chance to innovate and come up with new ideas. If that idea is good and works in the city, we further productize it and say, how do we scale it to other cities? So, 2 examples that are currently underway in the US and a few other countries is Uber Eats and Uber Rush. I think we have a video of one of them, so let's see a video that might...
Another video? So this is Uber Eats.
Uber Eats and Uber Rush.
Okay, we'll see which video comes up.
We'll see which video comes up.
You'll explain it to us, so it'll be self-explanatory. So now, is that a taxi company or is it a, a logistics company? Or is it a food company? I guess Uber Eats is going to be food being delivered like that, right?
Yes, so again, see, we don't consider ourselves a taxi company. For us, we are a pure IT company. We've got, we've got a 3,000 team of product managers and engineers that's developing this core technology. So it's developing this core technology from a people transportation, connecting riders and driver partners. From an Uber Rush, connecting small vendors to driver partners, to people who have a need for that. So it's about how do you connect supply and demand, and how do you enable a logistics platform to work so that you can get people from one place to another, you can get food from one place to another, you can get anything, flowers, a scarf, from one place to another.
But you all have a lot of great insight available to you, right? You all know where I'm going, how long I'm there, who's riding with me, you know what's regular on my schedule, what's not, So, and who else is coming to that same venue that may be among my friends, right? There's a lot of insight you might have, right? And so that I guess goes into also some of the business models you all can create when you start to see some of that insight, right, in aggregate form.
So all our insight, just to be clear, is in aggregate form. So we'll never take Ravi where you've
Not
gone.
trying to make you nervous.
We've never looked at where you've gone, and we never will. So that's my commitment to you or anybody else. It's in aggregate form. What is that will be helpful? So one of the examples is, as we've got cars that are going from point A to point B at different times of the day, in different traffic situations, in different weather conditions, what is the time that they are taking? What is the route that they are taking? So how can you better estimate ETAs, not because we think the distance from point A to point B is X, but because 1,000 cars have gone in that direction before, have taken that road before, and have taken X amount of time based on the variations in time of day, weather, traffic conditions, etc. So how do you better estimate actual times? Again, something that we're constantly improving. How do you better estimate maps? So maps is a technology is getting better. But when we have roads that are not named, when we have new roads that are constructed, when we have alleyways, how do we get better estimation of maps? And what roads can a car actually go in versus not? So based on the thousands and thousands of vehicles that have gone in that direction or not gone in that direction is something that we use to further improve our maps, to further improve our ETS.
Got it. So Amit, to be fair, there's another little company that's also doing this, right, in India. It's a three-letter.
I haven't heard of.
So tell us a little bit about, so maybe we'll do a poll here. How many people have Uber on their phones or use it? Please put up your hands. Keep your hands up if you're doing Ola as well. Okay. So, it seems like a mixed audience here. So we're in good company. So tell us a little bit about, Bhavesh is also very, he's a very interesting entrepreneur too, very passionate, very driven. He's not going to just give you guys a free ride, right? In the cliche sense.
No, absolutely. See, competition in any industry is good, Ravi, and you know that given all your success in various startups and competing environments. The competition in all industries, competition is always good. It pushes us to improve, it pushes us to be better than a competitor, it pushes us to provide services that are better for the riders, for the driver partners, and for the cities. So competition is always good. It's fierce, but that is what is better for society, because you continue to improve from that. So we welcome competition. India is not the only place we have competition. We have competition across pretty much most of the countries that we operate in. We've got massive competition in China. We've got massive competition in Southeast Asia. We've got competition in the US. We've got competition in the UK. So we've got competition from multiple sources. Our push is, how is our technology, how is our service of quality better than any competitor out there, be it an Indian competitor or be it a competitor in some other market? And how do more people prefer us? Because the service is better, the quality is better, and we are offering a service at a lower price than what a competitor is.
So you're only as good as your last ride then, in some sense, right?
In some sense, because if your experience is great, then that's fantastic. If your experience is bad, then you're like, I'll never use this service again. Absolutely.
Got it. So let's open it up to the audience for some questions. I think we've got one there already, very eager question. Please.
That's good.
We'll try and get you a mic, but go ahead and just speak it out so we don't waste time.
Hi, Dipanjan.
Drivers and making them Uber drivers, and there's an incentive model for them. What happens when the incentives stop?
So, the question is, are you throwing cash at them now, the drivers, and is that going to dry out soon, is one thing, because the incentives are what's motivating them to get into this, right?
Yeah.
Or is the model sustainable, you think?
Yeah. So I want to stand up if that's okay. I want to stand up and take
Hey,
this
we
question.
put you in the hot seat now.
See, okay, that's a great question, Dipanjan. I'll address it in two ways. The first is, as I said, this is not a market for just taxis. I'll give you an example. in San Francisco, again, when we started 6 years back, our first city, the taxi market was pick a number, X. We started very small, continued to grow. Today, the taxi market and existing cab services is maybe slightly less, maybe X minus 10%. But Uber is several times the taxi market. So it's not about taxis, it's about replacing every form of transportation, replacing car ownership, replacing other forms of transport that you have, because you don't need to buy your car, you don't need to buy a second car, you don't need to take any other form of transport because you've got a service that is cheaper, that is more reliable. How do you make it more cheaper and reliable, and why is it cheaper and reliable than a taxi service? A black and yellow cab, Kolkata, black and yellow cab, will be utilized 5%, 10% of the time. Because otherwise you're sitting, you're waiting for demand in a particular location. If you can utilize that 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, with pool more than 50%, that's when you can use the asset more efficiently. Means there's more income, which you can pass on in two ways. One to the driver partner, and one to the rider. So, why are our prices lower than, in most cases, an auto? Because we can use the cars more efficiently than a black or yellow cab or an auto. How can we sustain low prices? Increasing efficiency. Get 2 people in a car, get 3 people in a car. So if 3 people are paying, pick a number, 10 rupees each, versus one person paying 10 rupees, going in the same direction, similar parts, you suddenly have income that has gone up 3 times, which means you can pass on more income to the driver partner, and you can reduce fare for the riders. So as you gain efficiency, as you make the system more efficient, you can continue to lower prices, and you can continue to pass that on to driver partners.
So Amit, as you talk about that efficiency creation, let's talk about that surge pricing that also comes up, right? Because that's part of the shaping of demand versus against the supply available at any given point, right? At least that's how you're trying to use surge to equate, right?
Yeah, so surge pricing for us gets the most negative press across any country. In India as well, we've got our various stories of why surge pricing should be on, should not be on. Lengthy debate in Delhi is still continuing. But what exactly is surge dynamic pricing? Surge dynamic pricing is, again, that balance of supply and demand. If there is more demand in a particular location than there is supply, then prices will dynamically change. Again, it's all dynamic, based on an algorithm which says is demand higher or supply higher. Prices will change and they'll go slightly higher. 2 things will happen as prices go higher. Riders who are more cost conscious are not in a hurry, will say, I'm going to wait for 5 minutes, I'll wait for 10 minutes because I'm not in a hurry. So demand falls because you've got only people requesting rides who really need to go at that time. Business meetings, airport, emergencies, etc. So demand falls. At the same time,
every single day
supply
we do
comes
small
into that
things with
place
great love,
because a message goes out
and to be able to share that through Uber Eats,
saying this is
it's even better.
Hexagon area where demand is higher, supply is low, and there's dynamic higher pricing. So supply increases, demand comes down, it balances, surge pricing comes down. A similar percent of the extra income on a higher priced ride, so 80% of all the income on rides goes to our driver partners. Even for higher priced ride is the same percent. So most of the benefit on a higher priced ride goes to a driver partner. Otherwise there's no incentive for him or her to say I'm going to come to a location which may be slightly far if I'm not getting the benefit of the higher price on that ride.
Got it. So, I think where the surge pricing, just to kind of continue the discussion on that, is, somebody goes from point A to point B for $100, and then they can't get back unless it's $800, let's say, right? So, you left your home thinking you could get back for 100, and you're willing to pay a couple of hundred, but now it's like 8 times more or something.
But 100 plus 800, 900 is probably much cheaper than your other alternative.
No, understood. But, obviously something has happened to make it 800, right? It's either flooding or, somebody has to go through, the demand has just gone crazy at that point, right? But, I think that's where psychologically people have an issue with it, right? In terms of not understanding the model.
No, I completely agree, Ravi, but Look at hotels, like look at airlines. Like we don't call it surge pricing, we don't call it dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen the same fare for from a ticket from Kolkata to Delhi?
No, but you shouldn't use the airline business as an example. But anyway, so let's take some more questions from the audience. Yeah, please.
CBD of a city, with so much of data analytics going behind everything you do, can the demand be improved so that we can?
So can you smooth things out more? You know, and I'm sure you'll have that intent to do it, right?
No, absolutely, right? There's always areas for opportunity. I think kind of what we've seen is a demand is growing exponentially. So, you know, on day one, there might have been a surge because demand was at an X level, and we said, okay, you know, supply positioning needs to be X. Day two, demand continues to grow exponentially. So in many of our areas, many of our cities, demand is growing exponentially. So you are solving for something in an exponential growing market, and you're doing the best, you can.
So only one good thing I've seen of surge pricing in the last 2 weeks is I started taking the Uber share.
There we go. There we go.
Good. Couple more questions. Go ahead. Can you pass the mic down?
There's one question at the back there. We'll do it after that. Yeah.
I've been taking Uber for the last few years. I think initially when it started, the quality of the driver partners was much better than it is today. So the question is, how do you grow and still maintain the quality of drivers?
Yeah, good question. Because 350,000 partners, driver partners. I mean, you know, you can't be training them all yourselves. How do you do it? What technology are you using? How do you maintain the quality at a very high level, right?
Yeah.
With that scale.
Yeah. No, that's a phenomenal question, and it's not an easy task. It's not an easy task. It's something that we, you know, try to innovate at maintaining and increasing that level of quality. So we do a couple of things. There's a training for everybody who gets onboarded. That is without fail. So everybody who gets onboarded has a training on various topics, including, you know, what will give you a 5-star rating, how to talk to a rider, you know, things that you should do that make an experience better. Open the door, say good morning, good evening, say thank you. So a bunch of things which, you know, which many of these people and many of our driver partners, they're using a smartphone for the first time. So, you know, a smartphone training. So a lot of training that happens. Second is huge focus on the feedback that we get after every ride. So after every ride, you're rating your ride. So if a ride is 3-star or 2-star because something hasn't gone wrong, we take that very seriously and we will follow up with the driver partner. So you will never see somebody who's got below a 4-star rating coming to pick you up. Anybody falls below a 4-star rating, we will waitlist the person and say, okay, what are the things that we need to do? Can that person improve in terms of quality, or do we think this person's not, you know, right to be on the platform? So every ride, every feedback is taken very seriously. Is this absolutely foolproof? No, but it's a hard problem, and that's a current problem.
So Amit, talking about ratings, you know, just a quick anecdote. I was in an Uber recently, took a ride. At the end of the ride, the driver was clearly new. You know, he gets a screen where he pressed a 3-star. So I said, you know, he's clearly rating me. So I said, what, boss, I didn't even talk to you, okay? I just sat in the car. Why did you rate me 3 out of 5, okay? What happened? And, you know, obviously he thought at that moment that this is the good rating in the middle. So anyway, so I think, you know, even riders are being rated, right? By the drivers.
Absolutely.
It's a two-way street.
So everybody who's got an Uber account, you can check your rating on the app. You're being rated. That'll give you a good sense of what driver partners think of you. Absolutely critical, very critical.
Yeah. But he was smart enough to say, give me a 5.
Give me a 5. I'm giving you a 3.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Potentially.
Hello sir, this is Kushal here. So coming back to the search pricing, I want to understand, like, as a brand, when you position yourself in the market, most of the big brands that we see, they have a fixed rate. So let's say even if the demand increases, and the supply falls, let's say if I go to buy a Coca-Cola or a chocolate, Cadbury, the prices won't rise up. Even for the clothes, for any product or any, item that I choose to buy or avail from the market, the prices do not go high depending on the supply. The quantity might vary depending on the availability. So how does it affect your business or brand image? Because Indians as a whole are very sensitive to pricing. So what is your take on it?
No, so, you all are doing a wonderful job of educating at scale consumers on dynamic, elastic pricing, right? So, I mean, you all are doing the hard work in some sense and bearing the brunt of it. In some sense, you, Ola, others that are trying to do surge pricing, right?
Yeah, but the question, if I understand correctly, is, does it hurt consumer perception because your prices vary? Potentially, but would you rather have a car at any given time, the price may vary, than not have a car when you really need it? So that's the key question that every rider has to answer for themselves. The price may not be the right price. We can never offer the lowest price to all riders to all the time because of the variation in demand and supply. So would you rather say Uber is reliable, there'll be a car available at all times, it might not be the price I like, but I know I can get a ride and I'll be able to get somewhere if it's an emergency, if I have to get somewhere.
We'll take 2 more questions.
A question on a different topic than search pricing for a change.
Thank you.
You've been doing Uber Go and Uber Pool and all that. Do you have any plan for Uber Premium, where you can do those BMWs and something at a premium price, but still?
So he wants a Beamer or a Merc to show up. So what's the plan there? Do you go high end?
So never say never. So we continue to experiment with different offerings. But again, a majority, we just talked about why, as Indian consumers, we are very price conscious. So majority of the demand, majority of what people want to say is, I want to pay the very lowest, but get the best class service. So it is how do you maintain the cost as low as possible? So yes, potentially, but the majority of the demand is at the lowest price product.
But there's a lot of innovation going on, right? Both you guys and Ola. I have to actually open the app and see how many buttons show up to know what your latest innovation is. Ola suddenly started to offer, you can book a cab for 4 hours or something. You can book intercity cabs. All of that has shown up in the last couple of weeks, right? In some sense. So I guess very, very vibrant. We'll take one last question. If you got the mic.
Yeah, I got the mic.
Rajat, I'll get it.
I got the mic.
Yeah, one sec, Rajat. Let's just get this. I'll come to you for the last one. Go ahead.
Switched over, that's good.
I also switched over to Uber. So it's a question and feedback both. You pay to your driver partner as per trip, not as per the billing or the meter price. Because I think 14 trips you pay 4,000 rupees for 24 hours, 14 trips, 4,000. Earlier it was 6 trip or 7 trip, you pay 2,500 rupees. So they look for a smaller trip, 60 rupees trip, 80 rupees, because the moment they complete 14 trips, they are free, they go home and they earn 4,000 rupees a day. And when I as a rider, when I say I go to a far place around 25 kilometers, they say, oh, it's very difficult because I have to go very far. It will take 3 hours because out of 24 hours, 3 hours gone. They always look for a smaller trip. So do you really make money by giving as per trips, not as per the percentage share? And at the same time, we are suffering because they are not happy with my long drive. They are happy with my smaller drive. Just asking.
Yeah. So good question. So Amit, price depends on a lot of factors, right? I mean, like surge depends on supply and timing and when you do it. You could also price based on destination, right? And the validity of, let's say, a return trip for that cab coming back from that location. You might charge me twice the amount to make that trip, right? Yeah. I mean, so more sophisticated pricing will come, right? So how do you answer this question?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you for the feedback. I think we're always experimenting with different mechanisms. So different pricing mechanisms for both riders as well as different payout mechanisms to our driver partners. So what you experienced is one of several structures and schemes that we do. And again, it's experimentation in terms of what is the ideal that works for most of the people. So you'll continue to see experiments, and some experiments have flaws, like the one that you just talked about. And if they have flaws and they're not working for riders or rider partners, they'll slowly be phased out over time. One of the other things that we've just launched in a few cities is upfront pricing, which is instead of variable pricing, you input your destination and you have a fare. So you know what your fare is going to be before you actually take the ride. And then it's your decision whether you take that ride or not ride. So again, various experiments both on the rider pricing and the driver partner payout that continue to happen.
Okay, Rajat, you get the last question.
Okay, very good. Amit, this is Rajat.
There's one question there that's been from the beginning. So after you...
Okay, go ahead.
Second last. Okay,
Yeah.
So Amit, thanks so much. While this mic says surge pricing or something like that, I'm not asking you I'm not asking you anything on surge pricing. I'm Rajat from NASSCOM 10,000 Startups. I just want to say, compliment in terms of, I've got two kids, daughter who's 20 and a son who's 15. Both of them Uber it out, and I have no problem on security hassle. So I think that's handled extremely well at Uber end. Hopefully you're going to get some more panic buttons, etc. also installed in the car.
Thank you so
that.
much. Thank you.
Again, in terms of, and also saying that, you guys are literally reducing, some are reducing carbon footprint, you're reducing car footprint, but does that make you in a difficult situation with the automotive manufacturers? I mean, that's a big industry.
No, we've got
How are you handling that?
We've got a great relationship with automotive because we'll probably be the biggest vendor. We'll probably be the biggest vendor, so it's a great relationship. As you see car sales, again, as private car sales continue to reduce, because if your son and daughter say, I don't really need to buy my first car, because I don't need a car, you're not buying new cars. So one is overall cars, in terms of new cars, will decrease. Existing cars will start to be utilized more. One person, two people, three people. So I'll come back to pool. We've got pool in Kolkata, where there are two parties per each ride. In San Francisco, we are trying 4 parties per each ride. So 4 seats, all 4 people could be separate parties. So as you reduce the number of cars, new cars are being sold, but it's not to private car ownership. So it's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, very good. And actually, it's very efficient. I drove in an Uber recently. I was talking to the driver, and he said he and his brother-in-law share the car. Yeah. So one guy drives the day, the other guy drives at night, and so the same car is being driven 24 hours a day. Yeah. Very efficient for them, right? So you had one question back right there. Go ahead.
At the back there. I think at the back there is from the.
Yeah, whichever one, Amit's prerogative. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry, I think he's been standing right from the first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. We got to rush.
Hi everyone. The question I want to ask is that recently Uber has extended the city limit in the service. But even after extending the city limit, it is evident that the demand of Uber is still there beyond the borderline where the service is restricted. So eventually Uber is losing out on a huge chunk of the segment, of its target segment, to be honest. So how do you look forward to solve this problem?
So I'm not sure I got the question.
Yeah, I didn't get the question.
Sorry? The city limit. So.
Okay. So you have some urban limit within which you're willing to deliver riders, right?
Correct.
After that, you're not willing to go out of station practically.
Correct. And the urban limit, again, it's something that will continually evolve and change. So if there's demand from certain areas, if there's demand from those certain areas coming back, and the cars can be utilized, these will continue to expand, but that will take time. So you're focused on where there's demand today, where you can offer a service that is a 2-minute wait time. But if there's no demand from somebody coming back 30 or 40 kilometers elsewhere, then you cannot provide that efficient service. So as demand increases, you'll continue to see the geofence increasing. The last question.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Sir, I run a taxi advertising company, and we had been contacting Uber for advertising inside your taxis, but Uber has declined that they don't provide advertising inside taxis. Is there any specific reason for that?
See, couple of reasons. One is the cars don't belong to us. The cars belong to a driver partner. So we cannot tell him or her what you do. It's your car. We have certain restrictions on quality, on cleanliness. So that's number one. Number two is the experience that we want to provide is a replacement of your personal car. So it's almost as if you're sitting in a slightly different car, and that's it. It's not a car with advertisements, it's not a car with branding, it's not a car with signs, because it's a replacement of your personal car. So it's not a taxi, it's not an ad generation point. It's about replacing your personal car, and that's our vision.
No, there would be additional income which can be generated for the drivers as well when you earn, and maybe there can be two sets of drivers who could opt for inside advertising, and there could be some set of, say, out of 350,000 drivers, you have 1,000 drivers who are interested in advertising, so you can go for it if they agree to it.
You will consider it. Thank you for the idea.
Yeah, very good. Hey, Amit, thank you so much. A big round for Amit. Thank you for coming in all the way to Kolkata to be here with us. Kamal has a...
I think we will present a memento to Amit here. Kamal, Ravi.